Hey folks, Dr. Mike Israetel here. I said my last name right. Thank you. For Renaissance Periodization, which I also assume is the correct pronunciation. The best exercise for your biceps doesn't exist. What? The best exercise, anytime you see that shit on YouTube or Instagram and someone says the best move for pecs, the best exercise for your legs is a myth. What the hell? That means a bunch of fitness influencers are wrong. That couldn't possibly be. Let's find out why it is. First, we're going to talk about the exact nature of the claim we're refuting today. Then we're going to talk about what makes an exercise bad, what makes an exercise good, asking, can a certain exercise that you think is your best, can it be your best forever? Can you truly have a best exercise? What about individual differences? Can a bunch of people all have one exercise be their best? And lastly, very pertinently, how to choose the best exercise for yourself, for the occasion, for the situation. Here are the claims. People say shit like the best glute exercise or the one must do exercise for your biceps. Are you doing this exercise for your shoulders? If not, you're going to have tiny shoulders forever. People legit say shit like this, especially on YouTube all the time. As it turns out, it's mostly bullshit. It's got a little bit of a grain of truth, but it's mostly crap. So some people will say this exercise is bad, never do it. And some of you may look at videos like this, I sure as hell did, and think, fuck, I shouldn't do that exercise. What was that guy's name? Hey, Scott, are we allowed to mention YouTubers by name or some kind of legal shit going on there? Athlean X. That motherfucker says shit like that all the time. You do an upright row and there's a nuclear detonation in your shoulders. It kills a village of people in Africa. That's how I understand biomechanics. Turns out that's not true, but there can be for you an exercise that's not a great idea. What are the check marks that we get? What is the checklist to say an exercise is unwise? First, obvious, when it hurts you, okay? The pain, you can have pain in exercise and it's fine and it goes away. When the pain gets worse with every rep, with every set, with an increase in load, it's probably not wise to continue doing it without any modification. Especially if pain doesn't get better over many weeks, it's the same or it gets worse. Not the lactate burn, not the tension kind of pain in the joints, pain in the tendons, and pain in a way that you know is no bueno, okay? If that's the case, maybe it's not the best exercise in the world. Now, it could still be the best exercise, you're just doing it wrong, but we'll get to that later. Point number 2, it doesn't subjectively seem to stimulate a whole lot of muscle growth. By the way, this whole thing is for muscle growth. With strength, it's very, very similar. Lots of sets of this exercise that's not the greatest for you cause an underwhelming series of events. For example, the tension in the target muscle, especially at lower reps, is just not very overwhelming. You know, someone's like, hey, try this new leg press. Doesn't it fuck up your quads? And you're doing it for like sets of 8. And like, can you feel the tension in your quads? You're like, not really. I don't know. Like, I feel it in my glutes a lot. That is not a good exercise for your quads. Now, maybe it's the technique that's the problem, but it sure as hell isn't a good place to start. If you're doing lots of sets of the exercise and the burn in the target muscle at higher reps just isn't there. Okay, someone's like, try this new bicep curl, and you're doing it for a set of 25 and you're getting close to failure, and someone's like, oh, burn, right? You're like, yeah, in my forearms, not in my biceps. Bad news, maybe not the greatest exercise in the world. Many, many sets of it don't get you a really good pump. Okay, you know it's a really good exercise when you do 2 or 3 sets and your shit is blown up completely. If you've done like 8 sets of these weird flies you're trying on a Bosu ball or something, and someone's like, your pec's really pumped up, you're like, no. Matter of fact, they'd probably be this pumped if I did 3 sets of regular flies. Like, holy shit, that is not a candidate for a good exercise. After many sets, the target muscle isn't much weaker. There's not a local fatigue. Because look, if you're really stimulating a target muscle a ton, it should get weaker over many sets because something's happening to it. And after the workout, if there's no soreness at all, maybe it's not the greatest exercise. Now, of course, none of these by themselves is a big deal. If you do 5 sets of an amazing exercise and you don't get sore, that doesn't mean it doesn't cause muscle growth. Maybe it did, maybe a lot, maybe the most. But if an exercise really doesn't cause a lot of tension, doesn't cause a lot of burn, doesn't cause a lot of pump, and doesn't get you sore after the workout, gee whiz, you know, it's not really clear it's doing a whole lot. You probably feel like it's not, and that's probably correct. Next, when an exercise causes tons of fatigue, maybe it actually trains you pretty well, but the rating of perceived exertion is massive. You're super tired after, it interferes with the rest of your training. It just takes heaven and earth to do, and you get something out of it, but maybe not an incredibly good trade-off. The stimulus may be good, but the fatigue is so high, the ratio of stimulus to fatigue is just not great. Maybe it's not the world's best exercise, right? Someone's like, hey, you're going to get a huge back doing rack deadlifts, and you do rack deadlifts, and it just fries the fuck out of you. It feels like you're fighting a lion every time, and someone's like, feel feel a lot in your back. You're like, yeah, but I feel just as much with bent rows or with regular deadlifts, and I don't get as tired. Maybe rack deadlifts for you, not for everyone, is not the best exercise in the world. And lastly, when it just doesn't seem to improve much over time. You've been like doing hack squats for months and months and months, and your hack squats just aren't going up a ton. Your leg presses are going up like crazy. Squats are going up. When you put it into other exercises, they improve. But this exercise just doesn't seem to improve when you do it over time. Maybe it's not the best candidate for actually being an effective exercise. Because if it's effective, it should be making itself stronger over time, and thus it should be going up over time. If an exercise doesn't really move the needle, then maybe it's not the best exercise in the world. Now, that's all the stuff that can make exercise for you in a specific situation not the greatest thing ever. What about what makes an exercise good? It's actually a much shorter list. When it causes limited or no joint and connective tissue pain, when there's a killer tension and or burn to the target muscle, like if you're doing a kind of bicep curl and you're like, oh my fuck, my biceps are going to blow out of my arms, that's a real good thing. And if your elbows feel good during that time, holy shit, you found yourself a good exercise. And with volumes not being so high, especially if you first started doing the exercise, 2, 3, or 4 sets of the exercise, if they cause nasty pumps, tons of local fatigue, like you do 3 sets of squats and someone's like, are your legs tired? Like, I don't think I can get up. Someone needs to call 911 to get my ass home. I can't use my legs anymore. That's a good sign of a really effective exercise. If you do 10 sets of some shit and you can jump up and down after, maybe it's not that great. And if you get crazy soreness, like you do dumbbell flies properly for the first time ever with a deep stretch, you do 2 sets of that shit and you're like, oh, I feel okay. 2 days later, you're like, what the hell happened to my pecs? Like something definitely happened. Some damage was caused, damage maybe not directly causing hypertrophy, but it sure as hell was caused by a high degree of tension metabolites, which themselves do cause hypertrophy. So basically the real TLDR on this is if an exercise can feel real good on your joints and connective tissues, but can fuck your muscles in the ass, it's a good thing. That's probably a real good thing, right? In addition to that, if an exercise causes relatively little systemic fatigue or RP requirement, like you can get a real good chest workout doing like decline bench, putting 4 plates on that shit and having this real low range of motion. It's super fucking hard. It's hard to stabilize. You got to fucking arch and retract, and it takes like a ton of like effort to just like psych up for these big loads. And your chest like gets a good stimulus and everything's fine. Or you can try, just as an example, I'll get to the point where why all this is individual anyway. Just as an example, if you do deficit push-ups, someone puts a 25-pound plate on your back and holds it there gently. You do push-ups to like between blocks or between dip stands or something, and you get this crazy big stretch. It doesn't feel like the sets are very hard. You finish each set and you're like, I don't know, I feel a little tired like systemically, but I feel still really strong. But your pecs are blown up like crazy and you get super sore. Maybe it's the same stimulus for each one, but the fatigue is way lower for that, for the deficit push-ups. And then because it's less systemic fatigue, it poisons the rest of your program less. It's a better exercise, right? Because remember, yeah, stimulus is ultimate what we're going for, but fatigue matters if for no other reason that if you get tons of fatigue, it interferes with other shit. Do you want big back or big biceps? Well, if you choose the right back and bicep exercises, you can have big both. Because if you do back exercises that really fuck you up systemically, your bicep training later might be just like sending it in, or just like, I don't know, I'm mailing in this bicep exercise. This is bullshit. Like I'm not getting out of this because I'm so fucked up. But if you do really good back exercises that have a huge stimulus, but low fatigue, then after your back workout later that day or just later that session, you can get really awesome bicep work and get both. So fatigue matters. It's not just stimulus. And lastly, if an exercise checks a bunch of these boxes and gives you great high strength gains in whatever rep range you're working over months and months, it's a good thing. Like if the leg press pumps up your quads, makes them sore, all that stuff, and you're just adding 10 pounds every week for like 16 weeks straight, holy shit. It makes it really difficult for someone to say like, that's not a good exercise for your quads. Like really? My quads are stimulated like shit. My joints feel fine. And I've put 150 pounds on this exercise over the last year of training it. Man, that's a good sign. You keep going, you can only leg press so much weight with small quads. At some point, if you started leg pressing at 300 pounds, then eventually you're leg pressing 450 with the same technique, you will have bigger quads. It is a good exercise. So all those are good checklists. Now, if you find a really good exercise and it's your best exercise for say quads or chest or biceps or forearms or whatever, can it be your best forever? Can that exercise always be your best? Well, you can rank order all of your exercises on stimulus to fatigue ratio. The ones that stimulate the most and fatigue the least, you put towards the top. You have your number one SFR exercise, 2, 3, 4, etc., all the way down. You can do this for every muscle group at any one point. And then you will have a best exercise for that one muscle group. Say, okay, quads, high bar squat with a belt. Definitely the best stimulus to fatigue ratio for me, maybe the same for you, just as an example. But with months of training that best exercise, because you're going to want to do that exercise a lot as the dominant exercise in your program, or at least one of them, training staleness happens. An exercise has a high SFR at first, and then as you train it more and more, you actually learn how to do a better technique with it. You find the groove, and your stimulus to fatigue ratio actually starts rising. And then after a few months, in many cases, it starts falling again because it gets stale. Your joints start to get a little worn down in that particular movement. It starts to get really boring. Your pumps aren't there as much. Your tension perception isn't there. The exercise gets stale. Fatigue goes up, stimulus goes down, and thus the stimulus to fatigue ratio of that previously highest SFR exercise, here's like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it starts to fall. It starts to fall. And at some point, another exercise will have a higher SFR. So you'll do high bar squats for months and months and months. Let's just a simple example of just one exercise. And then someone's like, hey, why don't you do hack squats? You're like, the SFR is not that great. And you're like, well, is your SFR for high bar squats great? You're like, it used to be. But lately it's been like, like my joints are kind of feeling it. I feel like I'm trying really hard, but the tension in the muscle isn't that high. Let's try hack squats. You try hack squats, you're like, holy fucking shit. I am pumped like crazy. The tension is unreal. My joints feel great. I'm super excited about this. This is awesome. Now hack squats are above high bar squats. And now it's a good idea to switch more of your training to hack squats in that case because they have the higher SFR. And good news, getting away from more squatting, doing less squatting and more hack squatting in this case, actually resensitizes your squat because the longer you don't do something, the more it all sort of fixes itself. And then after a while, the stimulus to fatigue ratio of your high bar squat is rising. So as you do hack squats, at first when you start them, they're a little bit better than high bar squats. And as you do them, they rise and then they fall. So 6 months later, your hack squat is down to back to normal levels and falling. But this entire time, your high bar squat has been rising. So after 6 months, you may make the switch again to where high bar squats are now better again than your hack squats. And if you throw leg presses and maybe lunges into the mix, or pendulum squats or belt squats, you can rotate exercises every few months as they rise and fall in SFR. As soon as they're not the dominant exercise in SFR, you trade them out for something better. That means that you can have great training, well, sort of forever, but you can never truly say that any one exercise is your best exercise. People will say so what's your favorite exercise? This is the question I fucking hate. I know I'll see some of you motherfuckers on Instagram. You'll ask me, this is a joke. See there, what's your favorite exercise for back? What's your favorite exercise for legs? I have dog shit answers that are only partially correct, which is to say the exercise that's the most often highest SFR. But at any one point, if you see videos of me training, you could be like, so you said cambered bar rows were your favorite back exercise, but here I see you doing dumbbell rows, or here I see you do barbell rows. Why? It's because cambered bar rows are currently not my best because their SFR is low because of staleness. Now they'll be back eventually, but it's not even true to say that for any one individual, there is a best exercise. There's a candidacy group of a top 3 to 5 exercises that are always the best. But it's not true to say that it's just number one the best. It's as ridiculous to say there's a best exercise for chest for an individual as it is to say you have a truly favorite food, because you fucking don't. You may think you do, but you eat that shit for 3 or 4 weeks straight, you'll fucking hate it. Or at best, you'll be like, I can't do any more pizza. I know it sounds crazy, but try eating pizza maybe don't try eating pizza for 3 weeks straight. But if you do, you might just not be into pizza. And then you go to that same Italian place and you order pasta and someone catches you like, I thought you said pizza was your favorite. Yes, it was until I ate too much pizza. Now I want pasta, right? Same exact idea here. So when people say exercise you must do or everyone's going to benefit, that's not true even for the individual. It gets worse. Individual differences matter. Between individuals, there's even less common ground for what can be considered a best exercise. People ask me what I think the best exercises are for quads, and I give my usual list. That may not be true for everyone or even most other people. Why? Because other people have different muscle shapes. They have different pennation angles of insertion at their muscles. They have different limb ratios, limb lengths, fiber types, and nervous system operations. So that A great exercise for one lifter, the high bar squat for me, because I'm built almost ideally for that shit, can be a terrible exercise for another lifter. If you have really long femurs, if you're not super flexible in your lower body, and if you have a really short torso, the high bar squat is going to be straight dog shit for your quads. I know it's crazy. It's my favorite exercise, but it's true. How do you know what the best exercise is for you? Only an individual evaluation of your stimulus to fatigue ratio, which if you want the technical answer, just type in stimulus to fatigue ratio Israetel into YouTube and a video will come up where I talk about the entire concept. But the real quick thing is it causing a ton of tension? Is it causing a burn? Is it causing a pump? Is it getting you a little sore? And is it easy on your joints? Is it easy on your performance for other exercises and doesn't beat you up a whole lot systemically? If an exercise is pretty easy to pull off, but it gets you a ton of stimulus, your stimulus to fatigue ratio is high. Myself, any other YouTuber can't tell you you're doing the exercise that you're not supposed to be doing. If someone says, look, lateral raises are dog shit for the delts, you pick up lateral raises, and after a few weeks, you're getting a fucking crazy pump and tension in your shoulders, no joint pain remotely, you're getting more and more reps every time and actually having to use the heavier dumbbells, who the fuck is going to tell you lateral raises are a bad idea for side delts? What the fuck? Like your side delts literally get sore every other session, and they get huge pump, and you can't even raise your shoulder to brush your teeth later at night. Who's going to tell you it's a bad exercise? For you, it's a good exercise. For now, until and unless after several months it becomes stale, then you switch it up to another exercise, right? So for one person, there's no best exercise. For multiple people, there's for sure no best exercise, which is why this is a huge, huge dog shit myth. Now, some exercises, even for a population of people, tend to have better average stimulus to fatigue ratios, which is why when people ask me, hey, what quad exercises should I be doing? I say try high bar squats, hack squats, leg presses, belt squats, and pendulum or lever squats. Are lunges in the mix? Sure, but there's some glute, not as good of quad. Leg extensions, great tool in some cases, but really don't produce super high forces because it's not a compound pushing movement, it's just an extension. So it has its utility. I wouldn't put it in the top 5. Now, are some people leg extensions their best exercise? For sure. But for most people, you're going to find a very rare person that doesn't respond really well to at least a few of those top 5 exercises. And what about like Bosu ball one-legged squats? How many people is that for them the best quad exercise? Maybe 0, maybe 1 or 2 ever. So some exercises really are worse for almost everyone. It's kind of like saying, what's your favorite food? Is it a Taco Bell burrito, or is it like the finest French dining that I, of course, make because I'm a French chef? You guys remember that video? Most people would say it's fine French dining. And some, relatively rare people would say a Taco Bell burrito is the best, which I personally agree. I would much rather have a Taco Bell burrito than stupid fucking fancy French food. So there's no saying this food is better than the other necessarily. But like if you throw in a piece of dog shit into the mix and be like, all right, French food, Taco Bell burrito, or dog shit. And someone's like, well, it just kind of depends, bro. Some people like dog shit. Who the fuck likes dog shit? Or your dog might. He shits it out and eats it. I've seen dogs do that. It's really fucked up. Dogs are satanic animals when they eat their own shit. But in any case, like a piece of dog shit sucks for almost everyone. So it's okay to say, look, don't eat dog shit. It's bad. And it's okay to say, like, don't do Bosu ball squats with one leg in the air and one leg up your ass because it's probably not a good quad exercise. But when you say things like, this is the best exercise, or this exercise is for sure terrible for everyone, and that exercise you're talking about is an exercise that works for a lot of people, then you're in the wrong. Then you're in that YouTube bullshit club and you're saying some shit that's not true. All right. So how do you choose the best exercises for yourself? Because this is all, nobody gives a shit theoretically about all this crap. It's all coming down to the individual. What's best for you? Well, you can take the allegedly best exercises that some of these YouTubers with all good intentions are saying are the best and just assume charitably that they mean best average stimulus to fatigue ratios for a population. Try them for a mesocycle, evaluate their stimulus to fatigue ratio. And while you're doing that, you want to make the technique on them yours. So some people say do lateral raises like this. Some people say like that. Some people say like this. Some people say that way. Try all the methods. Try the method they recommended first. But then if you notice that if you put your pinkies down a little bit, or if you put them up a little bit, then you actually get a better sensation. If you're squatting, they said squat with your feet like this. You try it like this. You try it like that. You try it like this. Figure out slowly which method is best to get your stimulus higher and your fatigue lower, and then you can make the exercise yours, which is to say you can really give it as much of due diligence as you can. You're really steel manning the exercise. You don't want to refute it. You want effective exercises, so you want to tailor the exercise a bit more to where it's maximally effective for you. If after all that tailoring, which usually takes a few weeks, if the SFR is starting to climb and gets really high and it's a really good exercise, fucking sweet. You found a gem. Keep it in, keep doing it until the SFR is low from staleness, and then you can replace it. However, you can also do this for exercises that a lot of social media influencers say might not be a good idea or don't recommend, right? Or that they say is a bad idea. So when people say, like, don't do upright rows, it's nuclear death for your shoulders, okay, heed that wisdom, but maybe try some light upright rows. Try it with a bit of a different technique, and you may find that when in a certain range of motion, sometimes a very high one, shit just fucking blows up your side delts, blows up your traps. It feels great on your elbows. It's not super high effort, and you're like, well, I'm just going to keep doing this. And work with your grip here, here, here. Find a grip that works to minimize joint discomfort and maximize muscle activation. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, you built way bigger shoulders doing upright rows. When every cocksucker on YouTube and their mom says they're bad for you, guess what? You're now more jacked than they are. You're definitely more jacked than their mom. Do what's right for you. Experiment slow and steady. Always zone in that stimulus to fatigue ratio. Never assume a single exercise is bad or a single exercise is good. It's whatever works for you. Folks, I've ranted myself into an early grave. See you next time.